Jeremy Corbyn said he was hoping to play all this when Boris Johnson first came to power. He said that he would like to have a vote of no confidence, and those people who are against, those forces in the House of Commons against no deal, could come together and temporarily install him in number 10. That proved to be too strong meat for quite a lot of people who were potentially part of that alliance, and today the tactics for those who oppose no deal shifted. Jeremy Corbyn is insisting that he still might call a vote of no confidence at some point and retains the right to press that button when he chooses, but things have shifted. The first order plan, which will probably have to kick off as soon as next week, is to try, the opposition forces this is, to pass a bill. That's something government normally does. And this bill would be an extremely high-stakes bill trying to stop no-deal Brexit happening by delaying the date of Brexit, amongst other things. We don't know the detail of the bill, but we do know this is an extremely difficult thing to pull off. Why are they doing this? Well, in part, as I say, it's to try and get Tory MPs over to their side, those Tory MPs who are scared of the idea of installing Jeremy Corbyn. Number 10 think they've got an alternative plan for winning over those potential rebels, winning them back to the government cause, and not joining Jeremy Corbyn and the other opposition party forces. And one of the things they think might work there is the fact that they think there are new, more positive noises emerging from Brussels about the possibility of coming to a deal, a variation on what Theresa May negotiated, with the backstop out of it. That, by telling these Tory MPs that is on the table, and only by maintaining the pressure of no deal can it ever come to fruition, they think maybe they can pull those MPs back. So a lot is going to kick off next week, and we heard today there could be another ingredient in all of that, which has added to the election fever around. It looks as though the Treasury are going to announce a quickie one-year spending review, maybe even as soon as next week. Certainly it sounds as though it's within the next week or so, and that is expected to be an end of austerity, switch the taps on spending review. And you can imagine how that is contributing to the extraordinary fetid political atmosphere as we are only 65 days to that Brexit date. Jeremy Corbyn called opposition parties together to agree tactics on how to stop Brexit. Let's rock and roll, he said.
All ready, guys?
Yep.
Let's rock and roll.
Opposition party leaders feel they've managed to roll him off his preferred strategy, pushing for an early vote of no confidence to try to install himself in number 10. Instead, he's agreed to push for a law to delay the Brexit date.
He's made a big leap today by accepting the legislative route is the best way to stop a no-deal Brexit. And so that is a great achievement. I'm really pleased. There was no debate about it. He started the meeting by saying the legislative route, and it was like the rest of us were going, yippee.
You're going to try and come together, combine forces to delay the date.
In the first instance, yes, we need an extension to the Article 50 process, and then we need to resolve...
And that's because that's all you can agree on, isn't it?
Well, look, there is a broad agreement on that. Different people want different things. Some people want a referendum, some people want an election. Look, at the end of the day, we have to break this impasse.
Some opposition MPs gathered to sign a declaration against secret plans they're convinced Boris Johnson is working up to shut down Parliament to avoid MPs voting against a no-deal Brexit. They hope to combine forces as soon as next week to start a process that delays the Brexit date. Some of you want a revoke, some of you want a second referendum, some of you want actually a different sort of Brexit deal. The only thing you can agree on is to delay the date.
What we're talking about here is beginning the process. The immediate...
But then you all go your separate way because you've all got different beliefs, don't you?
The problem for the here and now, the place and the time in which we find ourselves now, is the likelihood of the executive here taking the United Kingdom out of the EU with no remit from parliamentary democracy.
Boris Johnson, seen here at the weekend G7 summit waiting for the Japanese Prime Minister, has damned such tactics as anti-democratic, frustrating the will of the 2016 referendum electorate. To help to defeat Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn has written to Tory MPs who opposed no deal in the past, asking them to vote with him and other opposition parties.
I've written to all 116 MPs that voted against no deal to ask them if they would recognise the importance next week of supporting a legislative approach, which would be an all-party approach, to ensure that we don't crash out.
And do you really think that the likes of Theresa May and Philip Hammond will work with you?
They will get the letter just like anyone else.
Andy, how's our friend here?
Allies of Boris Johnson think there won't be enough Tory MPs to give Jeremy Corbyn victory.
I'm afraid the history of Brexit, one of the big things when it's written that will stand out is those that were courageous, and I'm afraid those who were not and just kept their head down and, you know, stood by and let stuff happen which they profoundly don't agree with. And it's not good enough. It's awful.
What makes you think that's going to stop in the next 2 weeks? You could be in for more of that, couldn't you? And your project could fail.
Actually, what gives me heart, having said that, is that when we had that last vote in Parliament, the majority was 44, because people like Philip Hammond, David Gorkan, my friend Stephen Hammond, and so on and so forth, the whole group of Conservatives abstained.
Can you all hold up your placards, please? Our simple message is this: we are ready!
Just down the road from the cross-party event, the Brexit Party announcing it had finished vetting over 600 candidates to fight a general election whenever it comes. Though Nigel Farage said he might stand most of them down and sign a non-aggression pact with the Tories if there was a no-deal Brexit.
I think the Tory party in those circumstances would have to say goodbye to Philip Hammond and many of their ultra-remainers.
It will have changed a lot.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to be honest with you, it's changed a lot already.
Education system towards
Nigel Farage said Boris Johnson could yet turn out to be a hero for him, but only pressure from Brexit Party supporters had a chance of making that happen.
Gary Gibbon there with that report. And joining me now in the studio is the Liberal Democrat MP Tom Brake, and from Salford, the Labour MP Tony Lloyd. Tony Lloyd, I want to start with you. The main message out of today's meeting was this huge show of unity. You won't even discuss directly with Tom Brake on tonight's programme. That doesn't bode well for a unified front, does it?
I'm not aware that I wouldn't talk with Tom Brake, but nevertheless, the reality is this. Today was actually, belying your question, a very successful day for those who want to stop a no-deal Brexit. Now, bear in mind, that's the majority of people in Parliament. That's been tested. What we've got to do now is make sure both that the public understands the logic of that, the damage a no-deal Brexit would do, the things like shortage of medicine, shortage of food, the queues at Dover, but perhaps in Northern Ireland, where I have special responsibility, where a hard border could potentially see a return to those people who prefer the route of violence, to give them the wind in their sails. We can't allow that to happen. And that's why Parliament, as the democratic parliament of this nation, has got to now come together, putting country before party. All of us have to do that, and to make sure we create the process of breaking a no-deal Brexit.
So you all agree this is an urgent situation. You all agree you want to block no deal. So far, so unsurprising. This legislative plan, the reality is that that is only the one you're pursuing now because you couldn't get Jeremy Corbyn's original preferred option of a vote of no confidence agreed.
I might say, so far, your question, totally unsurprising, that you move from the principle of trying to stop a no-deal Brexit to the personalities. It's not about personalities. Frankly, Jeremy Corbyn has shown genuine flexibility. I welcome the flexibility, by the way, shown by other opposition party leaders, because in the end, we've got to get beyond the squabbles about who.
But the point is, it has been about personalities, and attaching Jeremy Corbyn to the idea of him being this caretaker Prime Minister has essentially killed off this idea of a vote of no confidence, because you can't get backing for him.
Well, we don't know that. Look, in the end...
Well, I think that's quite clear. Joe Swinson made that clear as soon as the idea was mooted.
You might want to put that to Tom Brake. You know, we may come to the point where a vote of no confidence is the way forward. A vote of no confidence does have to have somebody taking the reins at number 10, the caretaker Prime Minister, take us to Brussels to stop the no-deal Brexit, to take us to probably then a general election.
But it cannot be Jeremy Corbyn, can it?
Well, really interesting question. If the SNP and Plaid Cymru and the Green Party are prepared to sign up to that, are other people going to say we're going to put party before country. But look, this today, you're questioning. I understand this. It's natural these questions are thrown. The reality is this: I don't personally care how we stop at this moment a no-deal Brexit. What I do care about is that we do stop that no-deal Brexit. Now, that's a challenge to everybody. It's a challenge, yes, of course, to the Labour Party, to Jeremy Corbyn, challenge to the Lib Dems, Joe Swinson, and Tom will answer that at the moment.
Let's put that to Tom Brake.
Yeah, but importantly, it's a challenge to Conservative MPs as well, because we need, of those 160 Tory MPs,
OK, Tony Lloyd, stay with us if you would. Tom Brake, that's a good point that he makes, isn't it? Joe Swinson is now involved in this Remain alliance. If it goes to a vote of no confidence, would she now accept Jeremy Corbyn as the caretaker Prime Minister?
Well, I think, as Tony has been underlining, the purpose of this meeting this morning, which was very successful, very amicable, was to find out what was going to be the most effective way of blocking no deal. And the collective agreement, the unanimous agreement at the meeting, was that it was going to be through a legislative move, and that is what we're going to work on. And we're in agreement, that is what we're going to do.
But it's nice that you're all in agreement, but we heard Gary Gibbon say this is a really hard ask with so few days left. Surely the bolder move is this idea of a no-confidence vote, and I'm asking, as suggested by Tony Lloyd, now that things are moving on, would Joe Swinson, would the Liberal Democrats back Jeremy Corbyn if there is a vote of no confidence as the caretaker Prime Minister? Has things changed?
It's an interesting question, but it's slightly avoiding the fact that the thing that we're going to be doing in the first 2 weeks when Parliament is back is testing this legislative approach, which we believe will work, which has worked in the past in terms of forcing the government to do things that they don't want to do, because there is a majority of MPs in the House of Commons who are opposed to no deal, and we're going to corral that group together.
You have 22 sitting days left in Parliament.
Absolutely, we have 22 sitting days, but of course what you're suggesting as an alternative, the idea of a vote of no confidence, has many problems associated with it as well, including, for instance, the fact that the Prime Minister may choose to stay in post. That's why we think the legislative approach is the one that can deliver the goods and deliver them quickly. And there's a priority that we do that because our Prime Minister has said that any moment he may simply cancel Parliament to force through no deal.
You were at the meeting this morning. 5 Tory MPs were invited. They didn't even turn up. I mean, the idea that you have the numbers is questionable, isn't it?
Well, first of all, one of them would have attended but couldn't, so it would have been there would have been Conservative representation. But I think what, of course, has happened in the last couple of weeks is we have seen some very significant big hitters like Philip Hammond coming out very openly and clearly stating that he will oppose no deal and challenging the government. And I think he can bring with him additional Conservatives who have not yet stuck their head above the parapet.
OK, just briefly back to you, Tony Lloyd. No suggestion there that there's any move on Jeremy Corbyn's idea of a vote of no confidence and him as caretaker Prime Minister.
Yeah, I hate to disappoint you. I think Tom and I are almost in violent agreement. The split isn't between Joe Swinson and Jeremy Corbyn or Tom and myself tonight. It's actually between us and Boris Johnson. The ambition, and the very clear ambition of all the opposition parties, and as Tom says, we know a number of Tory MPs and independents, will be to stop a hard Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, which would be so damaging. That's what unites us, and that's where we will try and find common ground.
We'll see how long violent agreement lasts. Thanks very much for joining us. Fatima.